Okay. So today we're going to really dive into something pretty fundamental. I
Mhm.
mean, this is like getting down to the nitty-gritty of understanding like ourselves and everybody else we kind of bump into in the world.
Mhm.
And that is the self-identity and how society shapes who we become.
Huge topic.
It is huge.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we all kind of like have a gut feeling about. Like we sense this, but I think really getting down to the specifics of how this works
Yeah, absolutely.
can be really, really eye-opening and really helpful, I think, for anyone, but especially, for a lot of our listeners who are preparing for the MCAT.
Yeah.
Going into medicine, you're going to be working with people all the time. You got to understand people, so...
You have to understand people to understand their problems
Right, exactly.
and where they're coming from, their perspective.
Exactly. And so to help us kind of navigate all of this today, we have the amazing Dr. Jordan Carter back on the show. And so you are like the perfect person to talk about this because, sociologist, developmental theorist,
Yeah.
you have done so much work on identity formation and sociocultural influences, and it's really fascinating stuff. So
It's something I'm very passionate about,
yeah.
so I'm happy to dive in.
Awesome. So let's start, I think, at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
With this idea of the self-concept.
Sure.
What is that?
Self-concept.
Yeah, like when we say self-concept, what are we really talking about?
When you think about like the self,
Mm-hmm.
it really is like a big picture of yourself,
Okay.
right? It's kind of everything you believe about who you are, all the different roles you play in your life.
Oh, yeah.
So, student, volunteer, caregiver, friend, daughter, son,
It's everything, yeah.
all of that stuff.
Over the hats we wear.
It's all the hats.
Yeah.
And how you see yourself in those different situations.
Okay.
And it's kind of like the foundation for how you interact with the world around you and how you understand yourself and the world around you.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense. Like it's kind of like this internal picture of yourself,
Yes.
but it's also informed by what's going on outside of you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it's not formed in a vacuum.
Right.
It's really shaped by those external factors.
Okay, so then there's these other terms that we hear a lot, like self-esteem and self-efficacy and locus of control.
Right.
And these always felt like related pieces to this.
Yeah, they all kind of tie
To
in.
this bigger picture.
Exactly. They all kind of tie in together.
So can you help us differentiate, like, where do each of those fit in?
So self-esteem is really how you feel about yourself.
Okay.
It's your emotional evaluation of that big picture self-concept.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how much you value yourself, how worthy you feel,
Okay.
how confident you are. And self-efficacy, that one's a little more specific.
Okay.
That's your belief in your ability to do specific tasks
Okay.
or to handle certain situations. So, you could have really high self-esteem generally.
Right.
But then you get to organic chemistry and you're like, no,
Right.
I don't feel so good about this.
My self-efficacy is a little low right now
A little lower, yeah.
with organic chemistry. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's very situation specific.
So for pre-meds, obviously, that belief in your ability to do those tough, science problems or critical reasoning, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and building that up is so important for the MCAT.
Right, exactly.
Feeling like you can do it.
Okay. And then locus of control, that one always kind of felt like a little different to me.
Yeah,
It is.
Boy, how do we explain that one?
So locus of control is really about where you believe the power lies to influence your life.
Okay.
So do you feel like you're in control of what happens to you, or do you feel like things happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an internal locus of control, you believe that your actions, your decisions, your choices, those are the primary drivers of your outcomes.
Got it.
So you're taking responsibility for your own life, basically.
But if you have an external locus of control, you believe that things are happening to you because of external forces.
Okay.
So that could be luck, fate, other people. The universe just isn't on your side today.
Okay.
And there's research that shows that people who have more of an internal locus of control tend to be more resilient.
Oh, wow.
They're better at bouncing back from setbacks,
Yeah.
and they're more proactive.
So basically take more control of the situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's really interesting how that plays out.
Especially for like pre-meds, if you're going through that journey, having a strong internal locus of control is probably going to help you
Probably a good thing.
when you're
Okay.
facing those challenges. Yeah.
When you're facing MCAT prep, when you're facing applying to medical school.
Right, exactly.
It's a lot.
Okay, so let's do like a quick scenario here, just to kind of solidify this a little bit.
Yeah, good idea.
So let's say we have these statements.
Yeah.
Which one best reflects an internal locus of control as it relates to like MCAT prep. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So option A, if I don't get a good score, it's probably because the test was unfair.
Okay.
Option B, I've consistently followed my study schedule and reviewed the material thoroughly, so I feel confident about my performance.
Okay.
Option C, whether I get into medical school is really just a matter of luck.
Oh, okay.
Or D, no matter how much I study, some people are just naturally better test takers.
Got it.
Okay, so which one is going to be showing that internal locus of control?
I'm going to go with B.
Yep, you are correct. It is B.
Okay.
So explain that one to us. Why is that the best example?
Well, because it directly connects the actions of the person.
Mm-hmm.
So they're consistent studying
Right.
with the outcome that they're expecting.
Got it.
So they feel confident because they put in the work,
Okay.
they followed their schedule, they did everything they were supposed to.
Right.
And the other options are kind of like, well, it was out of my hands.
Right. Blaming external forces.
Blaming other things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a really good point.
So yeah, B is the best example of an internal locus of control.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So we've talked about self-concept. We've talked about self-esteem, self-efficacy, locus of control. All of this is kind of swirling around this idea of who we are.
Right.
But then there's identity, which is like even bigger than that.
That's like the bigger umbrella, yeah.
Yeah, so talk to us about that. Like, what are the different facets that kind of make up our identity?
This identity is really multi-layered. It's not just one thing. It's all these different social categories that
Right.
we belong to.
Okay.
And they all kind of shape our experiences and how we see ourselves.
Mhm.
So for example, your racial and ethnic identity.
Okay.
That comes with its own history, its own cultural traditions. And it can really influence how other people see you and how they treat you.
Right.
And the same goes for gender identity and sexual orientation.
Yeah.
Those are really fundamental parts of who you are and how you navigate the world and your relationships with other people.
And that's really just the beginning.
This is the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Yeah. We've also got things like age,
Yeah.
which comes with all sorts of social expectations and roles that change as you go through life.
Right. Like when you're a kid versus a teenager versus an adult versus, an
Exactly.
older adult. It's very different.
There are different expectations.
Right.
And then socioeconomic class and then occupation. Those are biggies too.
Yeah. Those are huge.
Those can influence your opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
your social standing, even your whole worldview.
Yeah, for sure.
And beyond that, there's religion, nationality, political views.
Right.
All of these things can give you a sense of belonging and shape your values and beliefs.
Yeah. It's like all the things that make you you.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that
Yeah.
the importance of each of these identities
Yeah.
can shift depending on the situation.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, so you might be in one situation where your professional identity is front and center.
Right.
But then you go to a family gathering
Right.
and it's all about your role as a son or a daughter or
Totally different.
sibling.
Like my cultural background might become really important
Exactly.
in that context.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So it's all about context.
So it's not just that we have all these different pieces,
Right.
but they can also kind of like interact with each other.
They can interact in really complex ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes they reinforce each other.
Right.
Sometimes they clash.
Right.
You can have internal conflicts.
Yeah.
Or you might face challenges from the outside world
Yeah.
because of how your different identities intersect.
Right. And especially, I think, for future physicians, it's so important to be aware of all of this,
Oh, absolutely.
right? Because you're working with patients
Yeah.
from all different backgrounds,
Yeah.
and you have to understand that those identities are going to be shaping their experiences.
Absolutely. And how they approach their health
Right.
and their health care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to another really big question. Like, how do these identities actually develop?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right. Is there like a single path?
No.
Not really.
Or are there a bunch of different ways of thinking about this?
There are a lot of different theories
Okay.
about how this all works.
Right, let's hear about some of that.
So one really important one is Erikson's theory of psychosocial development.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one?
Oh, yeah, I think we've all heard of Erikson.
It's a classic, yeah.
Right.
So he talks about these different stages that we go through in life. And one of the key ones for identity is the identity versus role confusion stage.
Okay.
And that happens during adolescence,
Yes.
which is a time when people are really grappling with who they are.
Makes sense.
You know, they're trying to figure out their values, their beliefs,
Right.
what they want to do with their lives. And they're experimenting with different roles and different identities.
Right, like trying on different hats.
Yeah.
It's exactly, trying on different hats.
Okay.
So that's a really important period for identity development.
Okay, so what are some other theories that kind of give us some insights into this?
Well, there's also Sigmund Freud
Oh, yeah.
with his psychosexual stages of development.
Right. Yeah.
Now, his theory is a little broader.
Yeah.
It's not just about identity, but he does talk about how our early childhood experiences
Okay.
and the way we deal with unconscious conflicts shape our sense of self
Okay.
and our moral identity. And then there's Lawrence Kohlberg,
Okay.
who focused specifically on moral development.
Okay.
So his theory is all about how our moral reasoning evolves as we
right.
get older,
Okay.
and how that influences our sense of right and wrong and the choices we make.
Okay, so those are more about like internal psychological development.
Yeah, more on the inside.
Okay.
But then we also have theories that focus more on the social side of things.
Okay.
Like gender schema theory. And that one says that we develop our understanding of gender and our own gender identity
Okay.
by internalizing societal expectations
Okay.
and norms about masculinity and femininity.
So basically like what society tells us
Yeah, what society tells us.
about what it means to be a boy or a girl or
Exactly.
anything in between. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's like this combination of what's happening inside of us and what's
Right.
happening around us
It's a two-way street.
that really shapes who we are.
It's a constant back and forth.
Okay, so let's talk more about the social environment then.
Sure.
Like, how do the people around us, the group that we belong to, how do they actually shape our sense of self?
So our social interactions, those are really fundamental in shaping our self-concept and our identity.
Okay.
And it starts really early, like from when we were little kids
Yeah.
with imitation.
Right.
We just naturally copy the behaviors and attitudes of people around us,
Especially like our family, right?
especially our families. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're our first role models.
Okay.
And then as we get a little older, we start to engage in role taking,
Okay.
which is where we kind of try on different social roles.
Oh, yeah. Like playing pretend.
Exactly, like pretend.
Right.
So you might pretend to be a teacher or a doctor or a firefighter.
I loved playing doctor
Yeah.
when I was a kid.
It's a classic.
Right.
And that helps us to understand different perspectives and how we fit into the social world.
Okay.
So those early experiences
Yeah.
really lay the groundwork for more complex social influences.
Okay. And then there's this idea of the looking glass self,
Right.
which is such a great term.
It is a great term.
Can you kind of remind us what that is all about?
Yeah. So imagine you're looking in a mirror,
Okay.
but instead of seeing your physical reflection, you're seeing how you believe other people see you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all about perception.
Okay.
So Cooley's looking glass self basically says that our self-concept
Right.
is largely based on this imagined perception. So we're constantly trying to figure out
Okay.
how other people are evaluating us.
Right. So, like, do they think I'm smart? Do they think I'm funny? Do they think I'm,
Do they think I'm competent?
yeah, competent? Kind
I'm
of.
a good person?
Right.
All of that.
Am I cool?
Am I cool?
Whatever's important to you.
Yeah, whatever's important to you.
Yeah.
And then we kind of adjust our self-image based on that.
Oh, so it's not even necessarily how people actually see us.
No,
It's how we think they see us.
it's our interpretation of their judgment.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is especially relevant today
Oh, yeah.
with social media.
Because we're constantly, like, putting ourselves out there
We're putting ourselves out there.
and trying to gauge how people are responding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like we have a million little mirrors
Right.
reflecting back at us.
And some of them might be distorted.
And some of them are definitely distorted.
Right.
Yeah. It's a tricky landscape to navigate.
Okay, so then how do reference groups fit into all of this?
So reference groups, these are the groups that we use to compare ourselves to.
Okay.
So we're constantly kind of sizing ourselves up against other people.
Right.
And these could be groups that we're actually a part of,
Okay.
or groups that we want to be a part of,
Okay.
or even groups that we're like, no, thank you.
Right.
I don't want to be like them.
Yeah.
But I'm still using them as a reference point.
Interesting.
So for a pre-med student, a really important reference group is going to be peers
Okay.
who are also applying to medical school.
Right.
So they might compare their GPA, their MCAT score, their research experience
Yeah.
to see how they stack up.
Okay.
And that can really influence their self-perception.
Yeah, it's like this constant social comparison.
It is a constant social comparison.
Right.
Yeah, we're always trying to figure out where we fit in.
Okay, so let's do another quick little check here to see how well we're understanding this idea of the looking glass self.
Yeah,
Okay, so which of the following best illustrates that concept?
got it.
Okay. A, joining a study group to improve your understanding of difficult concepts.
Okay.
B, feeling anxious before presentation because you're worried about what the audience will think of you.
Okay.
C, adopting the mannerisms of a respected mentor.
Okay.
Or D, recognizing and adhering to the dress code of a professional organization.
Okay.
So which one is the best example of that looking glass self?
I'm going to have to go with B.
You are correct. It is B.
Nice.
So why is that the best example?
Because it's all about how you imagine other people are going to perceive you.
Right.
Right. So you're feeling anxious because you're worried about what the audience is going to think
Right.
about your presentation.
Right.
So it's that imagined judgment that's causing the anxiety.
Okay.
The other options, they're about social learning
Okay.
and conformity.
Yeah.
But they're not really focused on that internal self-concept being shaped by what you think other people think
Right.
about you.
It's not directly tied to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more about behavior
Got
than
it.
about internal self-concept.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how individuals influence us. We've talked about how groups influence us.
Right.
Now let's kind of zoom out even further
The big picture.
to the big picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does culture and socialization shape our identities?
So culture, that's basically the whole system
Okay.
of shared values, beliefs, norms, language practices that characterize a particular society
Okay.
or a group of people.
So it's like the rules of the game in a way.
It's the rules of the game.
Okay.
Yeah, it's how we know what to expect from each other and how to behave.
Okay.
And socialization, that's the process of learning all of that.
Okay.
It's how we internalize all of those cultural elements. And it happens throughout our whole lives.
So it's not just like when you're a kid,
No, it's ongoing.
it's ongoing.
Yeah, we're always learning and adapting
Okay.
to the culture around us.
And that happens through like different agents of socialization.
Right.
Right.
So our families, our peers, our schools, the media, all of these things are teaching us about the culture and how to fit in.
So through socialization, we're not just learning how to act,
You know,
but we're also learning who we're supposed to be.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, culture dictates a lot of the roles and expectations
Okay.
that go along with different social categories.
Like gender and age and social class.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we internalize those expectations.
Okay.
And they become part of how we see ourselves.
Right. So for example, like cultural norms around achievement
Right.
could really impact how a student approaches the MCAT.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, if they've grown up in a culture
Right.
where achievement is highly valued,
Yeah.
they might feel a lot more pressure to succeed.
Yeah. Right. Or they might be more driven
Or they might be more driven.
to succeed.
Exactly.
Right.
It really depends on the individual
Yeah.
and their own internalization of those norms.
Right. So it's really interesting to think about how, we think of ourselves as unique.
Right.
We think of ourselves as individuals.
We're all special snowflakes.
Right.
Right.
But so much of who we are is really shaped by these broader societal forces.
It is.
Yeah.
We're not as unique as we think we are.
Right. But then the combination is unique.
Combination is unique.
Right.
Yeah, it's how we put all those pieces together.
Okay, so let's recap here.
Okay.
What are like the key takeaways?
All right, so we talked about self-concept. That's your overall internal view of who you are.
Okay.
And it's influenced by your self-esteem, self-efficacy, and your locus of control.
Right.
Talk about identity, which is multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
It includes all those different social categories that we belong to. And its development is really a back and forth between internal processes
Right.
and external influences.
Right.
So we've got theories like Erikson stages, Freud's ideas about early development, Kohlberg's work on moral reasoning, gender schema theory,
Right.
and then social interactions are huge.
Yeah.
We're constantly shaping our self-perception through things like imitation role-taking, the looking glass self, which is all about how we think other people see us.
Yeah.
And then culture provides the big framework.
No, hey.
And socialization is how we learn the rules of the game,
Right.
basically.
Oh, okay. So that was a lot
It was a lot.
to cover,
Yeah.
but I think it's really important stuff.
It's foundational.
It is foundational, and especially for anyone going into medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
This is crucial.
It's not just about knowing this for the MCAT.
Right.
It's about being able to connect with your patients
Right.
on a deeper level.
Yeah, to understand where they're coming from,
Yeah.
their background, their experiences.
To really see them as a whole person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to reflect on your own biases
Right.
and how your own identity has shaped your perspective.
Yeah, because we all have those.
We all do.
Right.
We can't escape it.
Right.
But being aware of them
Right.
is a really important first step.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking us through all of this.
My pleasure.
I think it's given us a lot to think about
Good.
and a lot to kind of like continue to explore.
Absolutely. There's always more to learn
Right.
about ourselves and about others.
Yeah, and to our listeners, if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to tune in next time because we're going to be talking about another fascinating topic in social psychology, and that is social norms and deviance.
Oh, that's a good one.
So basically, how societies define what is considered normal
Yeah.
and what falls outside of those boundaries.
Looking forward to it.
So be sure to join us for that.
I'll be here.
Okay, awesome.
See you then.
All right, bye.